it's got not only
That doesn't mean that you
Sharma,
have to,
Sharma, can I get you to mute yourself, hon? We're listening to your private conversation.
sorry.
That's okay. It's okay.
so there's at the website, there is a video that explains the technique, gives you some background, a little bit of research. There's a video on each technique that gives you the research, or some of it anyway, because it's pretty extensive. And then there's a demo video. So if you want to learn how to do womb breathing, you can do that in about 2 minutes. So, or tapping, or some of the other things that are in there. But we'll talk about some of those.
Okay, so back to questions. So I want to make sure everybody knows how to raise their hand in Zoom. We've been doing it for a couple of years, but just in case you don't, down at the bottom is a reactions button, and there's an opportunity to raise your hand. After you ask your question, Al addresses it. Make sure you lower your hand again, if you will.
And so, Katie, if you would, anybody would just help me with that, because I won't see what comes up in chat, or so just say, oh, here you go, Al, would be great.
Okay.
And I guess if you make me the host, I can share my screen. Is there some truth in that, you think?
There is truth in that, Al. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay. There you go.
So
You should have.
I just got my first mouse, believe it or not. And I'm used to touching everything. I just got my first mouse, so I'll try not to screw everything up with that, but let's see what we can do here.
Well, you're surrounded by counselors. I think you'll be okay, Al.
I may need some counseling before we're done. Let's see. Show all windows. There we go. All right, and then I can make this big.
There it is.
All right, let's see, how do I make it big? I go somewhere. I'm not sure how to fill the screen.
You go to slideshow up at the top.
Oh, okay, all right. And I go to
From the beginning.
From the beginning. Thank you. All right.
Nice.
So, can you see that?
Yep.
Yes, perfect.
All right. So these are my three grandsons, three of the loves of my life. And it's an introductory slide to some training we do here in Vermont, but it had the four pieces that to me are just the most critical components when we think about helping anybody, including people with autism, behave better, right? And so the first goal really is safety. How do we create safety in our relationships with them? How do we help them experience safety? Because safety is an embodied experience, and it's an interpersonal achievement. It happens between people. When you feel safe, when your body feels safe, this is the physiology you were talking about, Katie. When your body feels safe, your blood pressure is low, your heart rate is low, the blood is not all in your large muscles, your cortisol, stress hormones are under control, you feel safe. You learn to trust those people who you're in that state with, and you capture that in your relationships with those people. And when all of that happens, we get good behavior. And that is the path to good behavior. There's a lot of other paths, but I think no matter what path you take, these are the core elements. And so I did say, there you go. This is my son, Michael, and my three grandchildren. And I did mention, or Leo mentioned that, you know, aside from being a psychologist and doing this work, I also work for a living. And so let me tell you the story about my son, Michael, who has autism. So he's not my biological son. I met him about 20 years ago, and we have, Katie mentioned this, the Vermont Crisis Intervention Network, which is the only statewide crisis service for people with developmental disabilities in the country. And we started that about 35 years ago or something. And I like to call it the crisis bed and breakfast, because we really cater to people who come to see us. We try to give them a positive stay where they really can enjoy themselves and settle down, and give their staff and community providers the time to, pull it together and get the services they need for them. So anyway, about close to 20 years ago, I got a call, and I was doing intake that day, and in comes my son, Michael, who I hadn't met up to that point.
For calling you, that means they're still telling. That means they're not sure what to do next.
Can everyone please mute themselves? Thank you.
Yeah. But if I do that, you won't hear me, Katie.
Okay, not you, Al.
Okay. My wife asked me that on occasion, So anyway, Michael comes in and I go to meet the people bringing him in, and he shows up with the state troopers. He's 11 years old and he's in shackles. Get him out of the car, get him into the crisis bed, try to get him comfortable. And to be perfectly honest, I'm rip shit about an 11-year-old who's been abused and neglected and shows up in shackles. And so the next day I called the state police and I said, this is insanity, putting a little boy in shackles because of what's happened to him. And they said he was so out of control that if we tried to hold on to him, we were afraid we would hurt him. So we put him in shackles. So he was quite an out of control kid. And he came to the Francis Foundation, which is a private nonprofit that I'm still involved with, but that we started in the late 90s to provide services to kids like Michael. And he came into the Francis Foundation through this crisis network, and we had a couple of homes for him. And to be perfectly honest, he just didn't do very well in those homes. And so at some point I said to my brother-in-law, who was the crisis guy, who had to keep responding to Michael. They were responding to him almost every day. And we had him with some nice people, it's in what we call developmental homes. So they're individual homes for people there to support them with lots of clinical support and all that stuff. And it just wasn't working. So I said to my brother-in-law, I said, geez, I'd love to take him home for a couple of weeks and just see if we're just not providing what he needs, or if he won't accept anything but being back with his grandmother. And my brother said, well, why don't you do that? And I said, well, because my wife and I we've had people living with us all our lives, and we decided at this point we were not going to do that anymore. He says, well, what about if I can talk her into it? And I said, well, sure. And so, of course, my wife said yes to him. And, a few days went by, and he seemed to be doing better. I wasn't quite sure what was up. And then one morning I went into our local store where everybody goes for coffee in the morning, and he came bounding out with a staff person, ran right by me, gave me a big high five, and off he went in the car. And the staff person came out and I said, boy, he seems like he's in a great mood today. And she said, yeah, he is. And I said, well, what's he so happy about? And she said, well, he's moving. I said, he's moving? Where is he moving? She said, well, he's moving in with you. I said, oh, okay. Maybe that's something I should tell my wife. And so Michael moved in with us to stay a couple of weeks and to see, what was up with him. And one of the problems we had every Saturday and Sunday morning is that he wanted to go to school. He didn't want to stay at the house. And so that would end up in a crisis. And generally the crisis people would have to go out and settle him down. When he moved in with us, he decided that this was the place to be, and he didn't want to go to school anymore. And so that was a challenge because I had work to do and running organizations and, all of that kind of stuff. Anyway, it was about 3 years where we saw, especially in the beginning, lots of violence. Most of the violence was not really aimed at me or my family. Usually was aimed at other people, but occasionally it was aimed at me, never my wife, thank God. And he could get quite violent. He'd throw rocks and he'd do all kinds of things. And I remember the first year, one of the things we did every single day, including Christmas and Thanksgiving, is we went swimming. Now, I had been taking people with autism swimming for 45 years because for some people, it's just a really calming event. At that point, I didn't really know about what the science behind getting in water did to people. And I'll tell you more about that later. But, you know, it was Christmas morning and we got up and I started getting Michael ready to go to the pool. And my wife said to me, "You're going to the pool on Christmas?" And I said, "Well, if Michael's going to get through the day and I'm going to get through the day, we're going to need to go to the pool." So, you know, again, about 3 years, and it settled down, you know, in the beginning. I would say probably 6 months it settled down, but by the end of 3 years, we were done with the violence, which was great. You know, there's a lot of people who think that violence or some of the behaviors we see in people with developmental disabilities and autism is related to their disability, and it's just not. It's just not, because there's a simple line from Gregory Boyle, who's a Jesuit priest who runs Homeboy Industries, biggest gang intervention program in the world. And he said something very simple, which I think captures so much of what we need to remember when we're doing this work. And he said, "Hurt people hurt people." Critical thing to remember, because, you know, we just don't like getting hurt ourselves. And we forget that really it's coming from somewhere else. You know, everything is about something else. And so anyway, a few years later, I have my first grandson. And Michael, I say to Michael, "You know, you're a teenager now, and you're probably not going to want to hang out with me and my grandkids." And we were inseparable for the first 3 years. I mean, he never slept anywhere else or did anything like that. Occasionally, we had some people who would hang out with him for a while, but that was about it. And he said, "No, I'll be with you and the kids." And he went from being this wild kid himself to being absolutely one of the best uncles anybody can imagine. The kids just absolutely adore him. He's so compassionate and empathetic toward the kids. You know, his birthday is February 1st. And since we had the kids, he loves the water and he loves to swim, obviously. We've been going every year to the Great Escape, which is a water park over in New York State. And that's his birthday celebration. And we always take all the kids. And the kids can't imagine ever going to a water park without Uncle Michael. It just, they just love him so much and enjoy him so much. And, you know, he's just the sweetest man you ever met. And so what accounts for that change in him? He's still got autism. You know, he's still got some kooky things that he's attracted to, but his behavior at that point was about being hurt. It wasn't about having autism. You know, he's a beautiful man. He's actually with my son, and they're in Florida right now, taking care of my mother-in-law. And he's just turned out to be, you know, really a beautiful man. So again, you know, we think that some of the stuff that we see, the behaviors we see that we don't want to see, are about autism, but then it's nothing about autism. It's about being hurt. It's about your survival system being turned on because of your experience, and learning how to manage your arousal. So that's the point today. How do we help people manage the state of their body? Because the body is the repository of all experience. And it's the springboard for all behavior. And I imagine you heard some of this from David, who got it all from me. Everything that happens to us gets stored in our body, right? It's stored in our procedural memory, in our central nervous system, in our brain, and literally in our body, in our autonomic nervous system. And then it's replayed when similar situations, when we're faced with similar situations in our life. And it's a springboard for all behavior, because if you think about some of the behaviors that we're disinterested in seeing, like aggression, well, what has to happen in your body in order to make it possible for you to run away or hit somebody? Well, you have to move all of your blood into your large muscles. You have to increase your heart rate and increase your blood pressure. You have to get all your stress hormones, adrenaline, noradrenaline out. You got to get cortisol pumped out so you can get sugar into your blood so that it will feed the muscles that are going to do all this work. The body is the place where we should be doing the work, right? We want to get ahead of the behavior, go to the body. And so let me give you a quick example of that. I have a young lady also with autism, although, you know, as my son Leo says, and you probably have heard before, if you know one person with autism, then you know one person with autism, because it doesn't really describe the person. It describes some of their characteristics, possibly. Anyway, I had this young lady, Heather, and I had been working with her for a number of years. And we started doing right away, you know, some training on how the brain functions. And we did a lot of tapping. And I'll talk more about tapping later on. But I come out of my office and there's a little back porch. Our office is this old farmhouse on the river. And I come out and she's sort of all bunched up and sitting on the bench outside. And I say, "How you doing, Heather?" And she says, "Fine." But I look at her body and I say, "It's not fine." She's all collapsed. She's protecting herself. Her head is over, her head's down. And so I go over, I drop my bag because I know I'm not going to the meeting I'm headed to. And I sit next to her and I say, "You know, I'm looking at you there, honey, and you're not making any eye contact. Your head's down. Your shoulders are rounded. You're looking at the floor. What's up?" And she says, "I think I'm having a heart attack." Now, some of the background on Heather is that in emergency services in Vermont, like everybody knew her because she was such a frequent flyer on the ambulance going to the hospital. I don't know if you guys have people like that, but I assume you do. And so I was meeting regularly with the director of the hospital, explaining to him what we were doing for treatment and all of this stuff. And so when I come out and she's all folded up and she says, "I think I'm having a heart attack," I assume what she wants to do is go to the hospital. And at this point, I'm not sure if she's called an ambulance or not, because she used to do that regularly. Ambulances would just show up and she'd be gone. And I said, "You know, what do you want to do?" And she said, "I want to go to the hospital." And I said, "Okay." I said, "How about we try a little tapping first? Because anxiety happens in your heart, right? It happens in your body. And it can feel similar to some cardiac problem that you're having because your heart is racing now, right?" And she said, "Okay." And I said, "So why don't we do a little tapping?" And we go through the whole tapping routine, which again, I'll show you in a little bit. And there's a mantra that goes with it. And I just say, "Doing the best I can," and everybody knows it. "You're doing the best you can," and everybody knows it. As I tap on these meridian points, and it takes about 2 minutes. And before that, I said to her, "If you do the tapping with me, I'll call the ambulance for you," right? Instead of, you're not getting on an ambulance. You don't need it. You're not sick or whatever. We do the tapping, again, 2 minutes, and up comes her head, shoulders open up. She's talking, making eye contact. And I say to her, "What do you think we should do now?" And she says, "Well, I'll go do my day program." So where are you on a scale of 1 to 10? I'd asked her before we started. She said, "I'm a 10, 10 being the highest level of arousal, the most anxious." And I said, "Where are you now?" She said, "I'm a 1. I said, "Okay, great." And off she went to her day program. Now, I don't know, there's no medication that would have done that in 2 minutes. I don't know anything other than these body-based techniques that can turn the body around so quickly, which then in turn turns the mind around, right? I no longer need the ambulance because my body feels fine. I could talk to her about ambulances are for people who are sick. You're taxing the whole ambulance system. Emergency services don't want to see you. They won't admit you to the hospital. All of that would have done nothing. 2 minutes of tapping, and we're where we need to be. All right, so let me tell you some of the things I want to talk about today. First of all, even though I'm going to be talking for hours, we talk too much. That's one of the rules. We just talk too much. And I will show you some information, or share some information with you about brain function, about limitations of people with developmental disabilities and autism, and why it's more difficult for them to process language and those kinds of things. I'll talk about the brain and how it organizes how we behave. I'll show you the two systems in the brain. Again, talk about the problems with executive function with people with developmental disabilities and autism. Then we'll jump into different ways to provide the treatment. One of the interesting things I think is, I don't know what's happening out there, but actually I do know what's happening out there. The number of therapists to see kids or to see people and the expertise in the area of developmental disabilities is really quite limited. The waiting lists nationally are now 10 weeks. 10 weeks. So if you're depressed or anxious, or you have PTSD and you sign up for some treatment, 10 weeks, 2.5 months. I don't know if any of you have ever been anxious or depressed. You haven't got 10 minutes to get out of that, never mind 10 weeks. And so there are alternative ways to that are scientifically based to provide some of the things that people need to make them feel less anxious, less depressed, and more able to do the things that they want to do. Okay. And the last part, and I don't want to forget this because this is the most important part in some ways if you want to help other people, is you have to develop a practice yourself, right? And you have to use your practice with other people, not in private. You have to do it with them, right? So, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but in this age of COVID, in this age of future shock and politics and all of these other things that the rate at which the world is changing or falling apart, I don't know which one of those is correct. We need these things. We all need these things. The first person you need to work on when you help somebody else is yourself, right? It doesn't start with the other person. It starts with you. All right. I'm going to talk just a minute about this, and then I'll give you an example in a couple of minutes. And this is the state or stage model. And so there's a very famous psychologist who works in ethics, which you wouldn't think I would be interested in, but he says it's unethical to treat trauma without a stage model. It's unethical to treat trauma without a stage model. Now, I assume you realize that most of the people who have this incredibly disturbed behavior, it's because they have a mental health and other problems that are almost always related to experience, at least in part, right? And so trauma dysregulates your body, dysregulates your mind. And there's really three things in almost any stage model you see. And this is similar to Bruce Perry. I don't know if you know Bruce Perry, but the first step in helping someone is to help them regulate, right? Get their body back under control. Now, we do this very well with little kids, right? We pick them up, we hold them, we pat them, we rock them. As people get older, we're inclined to do less of that. That's stage one, is just to get people to regulate. Stage two is all about relationships, right? It's about us relating to them, us interacting in ways with them that build our relationship. And then if we can help people regulate and we have a reasonable, good relationship with them in which they feel safe, then we can reason with them. Well, almost nobody does stage 1 and 2 work, right? We jump right to stage 3. So you see Heather on the porch, you know, she's dysregulated. She says she's fine. You either walk, or if you dig a little bit, you say, ambulances are no good. People are mad at you. They never help. You talk a lot. And the problem is we just talk too much instead of helping people. So, you know, when it comes to treatment, this is Lassie and my slide for reimagining treatment. You know, the guy's in the water drowning. He says, Lassie, get help. And Lassie goes to therapy. Well, that's not the kind of help that this fellow needs, right? But we're very inclined to think that that's the way we get help. Well, I don't have anything against therapy, do quite a bit of it myself. But the truth is, it happens in day-to-day interactions with other people. So I was just on the phone with some gal and a case manager from an agency up north. And she's got this little guy who's 11 who keeps blowing up. And they keep telling him it's a bad idea. Well, I think at this point he knows it's a bad idea. He's got autism, of course. But they haven't given him any tools to help him calm his body. And I read his clinical plan last week, and it was all cognitive. It was teach him emotion regulation, teach him emotional identification, well, which is good. But when you're blowing up, it's not helpful at all. So let's jump a little bit into executive function. And you don't have to remember this slide or anything. I just want to point out to you that reasoning, planning, problem solving is a very complicated process that has multiple layers to it, and it's hierarchical. So you got to be able to be self-aware and inhibit yourself and have some verbal and nonverbal working memory as a foundation to do planning, reasoning, problem solving, right? Well, if you look at people with disabilities, including people with autism, they don't have, they're not self-aware. Inhibition is the ability to stop yourself before you act. Any of the studies you see on that, you'll see that they have problems with that. They also have basic problems with working memory. So the capacity to hold information in mind and compare it. So you have 3 or 4 facts, you got to hold them in your head so that you can remember what's helped in the past and what hasn't, and project that information into the future. It's a fairly complicated process, and people with disabilities have a difficult time with it. All right, so let me give you an example of this that takes on the regulate, relate, reason, and also some of the disability stuff. So years ago, there was a guy in the state hospital with a disability. And our state hospital doesn't like people with disabilities. They think they don't belong there. And I think they're right, but I also think nobody belongs there. So that's just my 2 cents. Anyway, he had been in a hospital for a year and a half, which is a really long time for people to be in the state hospital. They're acute units. You're supposed to go in, stay a couple of weeks and leave. The reason he couldn't get out is because he was so violent and so explosive that when they tried to get him out, he was very easily confused and, again, quite violent. So me and this guy, Dave, go see him, and Dave was planning to be in charge of his program. And we go sit down with Josh and we start talking to him, and he says, he's a sweet guy, you know, and he says, can you get me out of here? Get me out of here, get me out of here. And we say, Josh, that's exactly what we're going to do. And he says, can I go? Can I go? We say, yeah, Josh, that's exactly what we're going to do. We said, but there's really 3 steps to getting out of here. And I hadn't drawn this at the time, but as you can tell from my drawing, you have to be an expert at artist in order to do this work. So I said, first we have to find some people like Dave, who can help Dave, who can help you when we get you out. Then we got to find a place for you to live. We got to find a house. And then when we get those 2 things done, you can move. And when I say you can move, he jumps up and he runs out into the hallway where there's a bunch of state hospital people. And he says, give me the phone. I have to call my mother and tell her I'm leaving. And so what had happened is, I think his working memory couldn't hold on to these three pieces of information. So he understood that we have to get people. He understood we have to get a house, and then he could move. But when he heard move, the first two pieces of information disappeared because his working memory couldn't hold them. And so he got really excited, ran out into the hallway and asked for the phone. Now the guys, there was 4 staff out in the hallway. And, you know, anytime you saw Josh, there were always at least 3 people around him because of the level of violence. And so he says, you know, give me the phone. I have to call my mother. And they say, well, the unit only has 1 phone and there are other people on the unit. Where did they go in terms of the stage model? They went right to reason, right? He's dysregulated. Reason is not going to help. And so they go to, you know, there's other people here and it'll be free in a little while and we'll get it for you. And you can see Josh's arousal just go through the roof, because in his world, in his mind, all they're doing is stopping him from calling his mother. And all of those words they're telling him are not useful at all, and putting a frame around what he should do. Okay. So Dave, who's he's a big giant of a man, big weightlifter kind of guy, and gentle as the day is long, he walks out into the hallway and he puts his hand on Josh's shoulder. And you could see Josh just relax, right? So what did he go for? Regulate, right? Not reason. He didn't say, you know, you don't belong out here, get back in the room. He just put his hand on his shoulder and he said to him in the kindest, nicest way, we'll take care of this. We'll get this fixed, right? And so when Josh came back in the room, got settled down, the other staff, they were about to jump on him because the staff were about to jump on him, and Dave was able to bring him back into the room. And that's when I drew this drawing. And I put it in front of Josh and I said, Josh, what are the steps? And he said, people, house, move. I say, what step are we on? He says, people, right? So he couldn't hold those 3 pieces of information in mind, but when they were right in front of him, he could use them to plan on what to do. So, all right, let's talk about the brain a little bit. Did David talk to you about the brain? He did. So
A little bit, but we can always use more.
So, yeah, I'm fascinated with all kinds of things about the brain, but when you boil it down to its simplest, I take a very complex organ and make it very simple. It really is this simple. You have 2 competing systems in your brain. The pain, one to manage pain and one for gain. So you have survival systems, which is the middle of your brain, the limbic system, often called the emotional system, right? It's really the fear system. And you have the advancement system, which is your frontal lobes, your capacity to reason, think, look into the future and all of that. So if you have a developmental disability, your advancement systems, your frontal lobes don't function as well as other people your age. As a matter of fact, if you look at the IQ scale, people below 70, which is not everybody with a disability, but most people, you're down to about the lowest 2% of executive function. So we all have this powerful limbic system, survival system in our brain. And some of us have impaired advancement systems or impaired executive functions. Now, William James said this 100 years ago. He said it's much less dangerous to mistake a stick for a snake than it is to mistake a snake for a stick, right? So your limbic system is liable to take little bits of information and put you into survival mode. So if you mistake a stick for a snake, you're going to jump and but then you're going to see it's a snake. Yeah, it's a stick, and you're going to come back. If you think the snake is a stick, then you may get bitten, right? So in terms of survival, evolution, it's much better to overemphasize survival because you're never going to get ahead if you're dead, right? So what are some of the behaviors that are related to this? Well, explosion avoidance shutdown. Those are related to the limbic system, right? I would also say that those are all the bad behaviors, right? Those are the behaviors of concern to us. Explosions, blowing up, running away, shutting down. I think people often miss the avoidance systems because they're much less troublesome, but the activated things like running away and hitting people, that's all limbic activity. That's all survival activity, right? And so another reason not to talk to people is the antagonism between these two systems. So when your limbic system goes on, it shuts off your frontal lobes, right? You cannot think. So if you can think back to the last time something frightened you, or you know, there's a great story from this caseworker I knew years ago. She had her house broken into. And when her house was broken into, they didn't really steal anything of value. They took a few things, but they did some sort of mean stuff, and they poured juice all over her counters and things like that. And she got really freaked out about it, and she decided she would not be home alone. So she wouldn't go back to her house at all unless her husband was there. And you know, it got better over time and better over time. And, you know, 6, 7 months later, she's spending time at her house alone and feeling okay about it. Then one day she comes home and the screen door is open. That's it. She freaks out. Her survival system turns on. She jumps in her car and starts driving, escape, run away, starts driving away as fast as she can, and doesn't really come to for about a half hour. And she's, you know, halfway across the state at that point. And then her brain starts to come back online and she says, oh, screen door, could have called my husband, should have done this, could have done that. But when your fear system takes over, it goes right into these behaviors and it shuts off the other behaviors so that you can't really think or stop yourself or problem solve or any of that. So, and, you know, one of the things I think we could take away from this, so the fear system, your limbic system or emotional system, that part that's in the middle of your brain that shuts off your capacity to think, you know that system is on when you see explosions, avoidance, and shutdown, right? So when you're with somebody who's yelling or cursing or angry or trying to get away or trying to hit you, by definition, their limbic system's in charge, right? And so that's where you have to go. How do you dampen down somebody's limbic system? And that's not by talking, because that part of your brain, as you can see from this side, when your limbic system shuts off your frontal lobes, one of the things it does is shut off your language production and comprehension. So if you've ever been in a fight with your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, kid, whoever, and the words actually disturb you more. So when someone's talking to you when you're upset, it actually makes your arousal continue to go up and may cause you to explode because the language centers of your brain are off. You can't process language. And so you can't learn. You have no working memory in that moment. There's a great story. Well, it's not a great story, but a good story about this this kid. At the local hospital, they have like a great lunchroom or something, and they redid it, and it's supposed to be great, and people go in there for lunch. Well, sure. Anyway, this very traumatized, sexually abused, battered kid gets taken over to the hospital. And when she gets to the hospital, I'm not sure exactly how this, I know she's ended up in the hospital many times. But because of injuries and other things that are related to all of this horrendous abuse that she had as a child. Anyway, the car pulls up and they're gonna go and have a nice lunch. The staff person doesn't realize her history with the hospital. The kid is all on board to go to the hospital and have the lunch, sees the hospital, boom, fear system turns on. And she does a bunch of stuff, including taking her lunchbox and smashing it on the brick building. And so staff person somehow calms her down, I don't know, calms her down, got her back in the car and they start driving away. Well, what just happened in her body? All the things that we were talking about before. Blood all to the large muscles so I could hit and smash my lunchbox and kick the car and do all of that. Frontal lobes go off, so I have my working memory is off, so I'm not even remembering what happened. Blood pressure's up, heart rate's up, cortisol's up, dumping all the fuel that she can into her bloodstream, adrenaline's up, feeding all of this massive response, right? She gets in the car and they drive for 5 minutes and she says, "Oh, I'm so hungry." And she opens her lunchbox. In her food, it was a glass dish in there. The glass dish is broken and there's food and glass all over the place inside the lunchbox. And she looks at the staff person and said, "Look what somebody did to my lunch." She absolutely had no memory of smashing the lunchbox on the hospital because your working memory is not on, so you're not capturing information and using it later on. So I think you probably have found plenty of people who have little pieces of events that have happened to them. So somebody explodes and hits you or whatever, and they say, "Oh no, you hit me," or "Oh no, that didn't happen." It's because the part of their brain that captures that information isn't working, right? And so it's not that and those people get called liars and all kinds of things, but they're not at all. It's a simple matter of how the brain functions. All right. So we have a training program that we call Building Emotional Alliances. And at some point in the future, we're working on a curriculum for it. We've been doing the training for 30 years, but we're working on a curriculum for it. And hopefully we'll have it online in about a year or so and available to people to use. But the foundation of it is pretty simple, right? The first thing we all have to do when we enter interaction with someone is to regulate ourselves. Because if we're dysregulated, we can't help anybody, right? The second thing we need to do is help them regulate themselves, right? So these are limbic activities. We're not talking about talking here. We're talking about all of these body-based things that can settle the person down. Of course, these things end up in relationships. So if you build trust in relationships, you build safety and trust, then it gets captured by your relationship. So automatically when you step in, some people step in, if you have that kind of relationship with the person, they'll settle right down. And then you can do some critical thinking, helping them figure out what it is that's upsetting them and what they're thinking about, help them solve the problem, bring consequences in, you help them develop consequences for themselves that are reparative in nature. How do I make people understand and feel better about what I did? And then how to restore relationships. But you see, the first two steps are all about the body. The rest of it is all about talking. But most people, when you think about it, somebody's having a hard time, they do one of two things. They jump to problem solving or they jump to consequences, right? That's way up the chain. You got to do the ground level work first before you get to do that. So, and I don't know if you guys, if people out there are hot on consequences all the time, but we have a very specific way to help people with consequences. And it's this. First of all, the person's in charge of their consequences. We don't give them consequences, right? And I often find that people will give themselves much harsher consequences than we ever do, than I ever would. The first thing they have to do is have a conversation about what happened, right? Help them figure out, do some critical thinking. What happened there? Why did you do that? What was that about? And find the problem and then find some solutions to the problem. If you've ever been an ass which I expect most of us have at some time, the most difficult thing you can do is go talk to the person you heard about it. You know, especially if it's your husband or wife or girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, you know, to sit down with them and say, look, I was an ass. You know, I said, let's talk about why I did that and how I should do it differently. That's a huge consequence that most of us just don't enjoy, but it can be reparative, right? So I discover I hurt your feelings. Now you don't want to hurt my feelings, but how do I make you feel better about what I've done? And if I've done any damage, how do I clean up that instrumental damage? What do I do to help, you know, fix whatever's happened? So anyway, jumping to problem solving and consequences, it just doesn't make sense in terms of how your brain works, right? All right. And so I want to talk a little bit about what some of the alternatives are, aside from talking. Now, you guys, I know there's a bunch of you who are therapists out there, right? Who do this kind of work. Would you believe that if you look at mindfulness development versus CBT, that in 8 sessions of mindfulness group, which is a critical element of this, in 8 sessions, mindfulness works as well as CBT. So mindfulness versus talk therapy. And these are mindfulness groups, right? So mindfulness groups means I got one person who knows about mindfulness working with a number of people. And it could be a therapist or somebody trained, but you don't have to be a therapist to do mindfulness treatment. And so we get a lot more bang for our buck in this world where we don't have a lot of therapists, or you're waiting 10 weeks for a therapist, if we could do some mindfulness stuff. And I think I put this in here. Yeah. So I've been doing this for about at least a dozen years, maybe a little longer. But in the format that I'm doing it now, I do individual mindful support groups. So it's one person who gets services, but then their whole team. And it's a very specific format, which includes setting the tone for the meeting with chit chat, basically. How are you? How am I? Making people feel safe, right? Then we do celebration. What am I proud of you about that you've done this week? Certainly the literature on and research on celebration or thankfulness is profound, right? And if you think about it, I don't know how many of us get a half hour of how good we are a week, but that's how this group is designed. We sit and we talk about what we're proud of the person for, what we're happy that they've done, and all of these kinds of things. Then we do a self-regulation or body-based technique. We breathe, we tap, and it's based on, you know, the kinds of things that they find most useful. And by the way, the person runs their own meeting, so they get to choose who says something positive about them. They get to choose the activity, and then we ask them, do you have any concerns? Right? Is there anything you're worried about? And you know, it's very simple. And then we talk about any events that have occurred over the week. But you know, if you've been in these team meetings, they're typically nothing like that. I've been in meetings where somebody says, you know, this person didn't act up this week, so we don't need to have a meeting. Well, where are you building the resilience? That's what we need to do. We need to return them to themselves. We need to help them see their value and all the things they're good at, and not just concentrate on the few things that they're bad at. So anyway, that's a whole nother day talk, but there are some simple things that we can bring into our work, I think, that are pretty dramatic and research-based. All right, so let's see. And before we start doing some of the techniques, this is Matthew Ricard, who's a Buddhist monk, and also has a PhD in astrophysics or something. He's a brilliant, brilliant guy. But this is what he says, the messenger is the message, right? We are the message that we bring to people. It's not what we say. It's how we present ourselves to them. I was in my buddy's office one day and I hear this click, click, click of cowboy boots coming up the hallway. And I said to Dennis, Dennis, it's Tiffany, and she ain't happy. And Tiffany comes around the corner and says, and I'll tell you what, and she's just, those signals are there. We're telling people all they need to know without saying a word. So this is why it's so critical for us to get ourselves into these body states where we feel safe and we can project safety back to them. All right.
So
So-
Al, this is
Yep.
Katie. I was going to suggest when a natural break time, like maybe a 10-minute break, when you go from philosophy into specifics. I was wondering if, you could facilitate a break in there.
So let's do a little bit more philosophy with a little bit of practical stuff mixed in.
Mhm.
And then can we take a 10 or 15-minute break at say around 1:30, 1:15? Would that work?
That would be 10:30 our time, right? 10:15. Is
Yeah.
that right, you guys? 3 hours, yeah.
So you do realize I was sending you emails 5 o'clock our time,
Yeah.
which Leo pointed out to me. You realize you send him emails and it's 2 o'clock in the morning there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's 9:30, 10:30 your time.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. And so that's maybe a good point to say. Any questions?
Yeah, it'd be great. I think so.
Is this making sense? Yep, got plenty of nods. Okay. So let me tell you the story of Liam. Because this is just so instructive. So this is Liam's mother, and Liam is now sitting on his mother's lap there. I'm screwing things up here. So I have a Liam came into our crisis bed, and we have a meeting with the mother, and the mother is she's just hot. This is the mother we all wish we had. She's just great, and the kid's pretty challenging. He also has autism, pretty challenging kid. And we're in the meeting and she says, the problem with him is that when he's, I don't remember what word she used, but when his arousal's up, when he's disturbed, I have no way to soothe him. I said, oh my God, you are so brilliant. I mean, that's the problem. And so I said, I can help you with that. So she said, when can you do it? I said, well, I don't know. She said, I'm going to bring the whole school team and the home staff and all of this stuff. And I said, well, how soon can you get them together? She said, how about Friday? I said, okay, Friday's fine with me, but how are you going to get all these people? She said, don't you worry, I'll get them. And she certainly did. And so it was great because the kid came in, he's a sweet kid, very family oriented, big family, and they eat together and they do all kinds of stuff together. They really are good. And I think it was probably a bit of a seasonal problem for him because it was in the winter. And she did report when I asked her that he typically, middle of winter was a really tough time for him, and spring was a tough time, and the rest of the year, especially the summer, he was fine. But he would start to do things like withdraw to his room, refuse to shower, wouldn't come to dinner, high level of irritability. And she said, when he gets in that state, there's nothing I can do. So I said, well, come in and we'll run through some of these techniques. So she said, okay. And the whole team shows up on this Friday, and he shows up, and you see his hoodie. He shows up with a hat on, and on top of his hat, he's got his hoodie up. And I said, well, you know what that's about, right? That's about escape, about, hiding from the world, about withdrawal when you have to be in the world. And the mother says, of course it is. I have it written into his IEP. He's allowed to do that. I mean, she was just brilliant. So I said, how about we do a little bit of power posing? And one of the things you have to understand about these techniques and about your brain is that your brain will simulate what it sees, right? So you've heard of mirror neurons, right? So mirror neurons fire when you do some activity, but they also fire, same set of neurons, when you watch somebody else do the same activity. So oftentimes people say, well, I tried it, but they won't do it. Who cares? Just do it with them. Do it around them, and they will gain the benefit of it. So we do the power posing, and I'll tell you more about that in a little bit, but it's basically standing in open positions. And we've put together a routine. So we say, you're sitting down, one hand to the left, palm up, other hand to the left, palm up, chin up, chest out. So you're opening your whole body. And when you do that, it's sending a signal to your heart and your brain that you're okay. It's that simple. So we do that, and all he does is pace around the table. He won't sit down. He just keeps walking around and around. And I see not much of a change, but a little change in him after we do that. At some point, he sits down, and he's sensitive to touch. He doesn't like people touching him. So I pull my chair up to him face to face, and I say, Liam, I'm going to tap on myself and show you what I'm going to do. And if you like, I can tap on you too. So I do the tapping routine on myself, and he starts to slide down in his chair. At this point, the hat and the hoodie are off, by the way. And he sort of slides down into the chair, and I say, could I tap on you? Would you like me to tap on you? And he says yes. And his mother goes, WTF, right? Like it's the first time you met me and you're tapping on him. And he said yes. Well, after I got done tapping on him, the kid was half asleep. Literally, he was just sort of laying there in a chair. His body was wide open. He's looking around, and he's, practically asleep. And so I say, now how does that feel? Scale of 1 to 10, he says, real good. Anyway, I say, okay, now let's do a little bit of breathing. And we did some Voom breathing, which I will show you in a little bit. And it's just incredibly powerful. Peter Levine's been doing this since the 60s. And we've added humming to the end of it. And I'll show you all the steps of therapeutic breathing, but basically it's this. Voom. Breathe in. Voom. We did, I think, 30 of those, and then he passed out. Literally passed out. And this is him sleeping on his mother's lap. So there isn't any amount of, you better stop, you better cut it out, sit in the chair, take off your hat, that it could have got him to this state, right? What he really needed was to have his body worked on and get himself in a place where he could just relax. So this poor kid, his anxiety is just, running right through him. Okay, so I picked this to start with because it looks so kooky, right? Have you ever used singing bells?
Mm-hmm.
No?
Yeah.
Okay. It
They
looks.
are wonderful. Everybody has to have one.
I have to optimize sound here. Break everyone's optimize.
I heard that, Linda Lou. That means everybody at Catholics gets a bell, right? Is that what I heard?
Tell me if you can hear this, and then we'll do it. You guys hear that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's do 3 or 4 of those. And here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to close your eyes and listen very closely. And when you can't hear the bell anymore, raise your hand. And then we'll do it, like I said, 2 or 3 times. Okay? So check in on yourself, on your state. How relaxed are you feeling right now? How anxious are you? And then we'll do a few of these. So. You know what? I lost all of your pictures. I can't see any of you anymore.
Hmm.
Not sure how I did.
Yeah, if you go up to view and click on gallery,
Go up to view.
and
Yeah.
click on gallery.
I don't see a view.
It's in your upper right-hand corner.
Because of my slides, I'm not
Oh,
getting. But anyway, I wish I could see your faces, but can you feel a difference in your body having done that? Right. And so, this is pretty simple activity, right? Doesn't require a lot of training. All you have to do is sit and listen. Do you want to see the research on what that can do for you? And sometimes the simple things are the most profound. Again, I don't know very many things that can have this impact on you this quickly. This is effective singing bowls sound meditation on mood, tension, and well-being. And look what happens to anxiety, depression, fatigue, confusion, anger, tension, and even faith and spirituality. Profound effects, probabilities 0.000 on most of them. So it has a huge impact on how you feel, how angry you are, how confused you are, cognitive function, and even faith and spirituality. And, it doesn't seem possible, does it? That something so simple can have such a profound effect on you. But, you know, the reason it does is because it shuts off your me network. It shuts off your default mode network, right? So you can think of it being two executive networks in your brain. One is for sustained attention, problem solving, and memory. So when I'm in the moment doing whatever I'm doing, I'm not thinking about all of the social stuff that's always in the back of my head, right? So I pay attention. This is really all that mindfulness or meditation is sustaining your attention in a particular direction without judgment. And for guided meditation, which is all I really think is possible, all you have to do is focus on something for a little bit and minutes, and it shuts off your default mode network, which is the me network, which is I'm worried about what, you know, Katie said yesterday and what's going to happen tomorrow and what I did last week and all of those kinds of things. So even that simple exercise of sustained attention, listening to the bell, does incredible things in your brain in terms of your social network. And the default mode network, or the me network, or the social network, whatever you want to call it, they did a study of people, and what they found, this is Dan Gilbert and some other people, 50% of the time when we're doing something, we're paying attention to something else. And so, and it's also when we're at our unhappiest. So turning off your default mode network by sustaining your attention is a really powerful intervention, and it produces, you know, really very positive results in a very short amount of time. So, you know, we're in a time where, you know, between COVID and lack of help and politics and all of these other things, you know, the day-to-day experience of life is for most of us has a great deal of suffering in it. And the problem with suffering, you know, I think there are some people, the people at work gave me this man bites dog, because I used to say to them, they say, you know, the home provider did this, or the kid did that, or this or that. And it's the same old story. It's the same thing that's always been happening. So I always say, you know, let me know when the headline is man bites dog. Let's not complain about the things we already know and see every day. So, you know, life is full of discomfort and suffering, and it's also full of love and joy and beautiful things. But when our brains are organized like this to respond to threat and distress, a lot of things happen to different areas of our brain, and they make us unable to see the beauty in the world and the joy that's in it. And so for all of us, including the people we support, we need to clean up the brain in order to be able to experience the beauty and the joy. And so we need a regular practice in order to be able to do that. And so let's see where we stand here. 1:20. How about we take our 15-minute break now?
Okay, so that makes it 10:35 our time that we come back.
Okay, and Katie, if you could help me find the people.
Where are your people? Well, I think check in the top right. You should be a little graphics there for view. If you click on that, it should give you an option to see gallery.
I think because I'm in full screen.
Try to get out of full screen to see if that helps.
Can you exit? Yeah, there you go.
And so on the right, I see.
So minimize this, Al.
Okay.
So go all the way up there and minimize that.
Okay. Now I'm in.
And then on your right, up in the right-hand corner, you should see a little thing that says view.
I agree with I should, but I don't.
How
Can
about,
you,
how about he stop sharing? Would that help, Darla?
yeah, exit screen share for a second.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, you're
There,
back.
There we are.
Hi.
Hi.
So. Oh, then I'll just restart screen share when
When
we're
we
ready.
get back, right.
So, I'm not inclined to let you go so easy. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions, or maybe you want to bring them back after the break, but I'd love to hear what you're thinking and, or, what's it, got you starting to think about, or questions or whatever. So, all right, I'm not gonna hold you. Go have your break. And I'll go grab another club soda and I'll be back in 15.
thank you, Al.
Thank you.
15.
10:35. Coming back.
Hello?
Hello.
Al, I'd like to say, give a little feedback. We just found ourselves in kind of a deep place that actually takes some mindfulness and some focus and some learning. And I'm always pleased when I realize it takes kind of time to get to that point of understanding, that clarity that we seem to be at right now about some of the strategies and thoughts you have. You really need to get through the understanding of how the body works and the brain works before you can understand the effect of these strategies. And I appreciate that.
You know, I went to a board meeting for the Francis Foundation not too long ago. And, you know, they're regular folks on the board. They're great people. Most of them have been friends of mine for a very long time. And we've got a couple projects underway. And one of them is these mindful support groups, which I think are just a fabulous idea because it brings together so many things in a simple way that we can provide to people, all based on good research. And one of the board members said to me, "So what do you want us to do? We'll sit by the lake and put our feet in the sand and that's going to make us all better?" And I said, that probably would make it. But it's why you have to know the science behind it, the science of the body and the brain, particularly the autonomic nervous system, and then all the research that supports all of this stuff, you know, because otherwise, I mean, that's why I start with the bell. I mean, there's great research on the bell, right? And you can feel it in your body, but people say, they poo-poo it. They say, you know, it's not important, that's crazy. You need to sit here and recount all your traumas to me. Well, I don't think you do,
Mhm.
you know. One of the things I've been looking into quite a bit is lateral eye movements. And we won't really talk about it today, but I'm really excited about it because the recent research says it shuts off your amygdala. Right, so you guys all know about EMDR.
Mhm.
I'm not suggesting that people do EMDR without being trained, but I am suggesting that lateral eye movements are incredibly useful as a grounding technique, not as a therapy technique, but simply as a grounding technique to get your body back to where it needs to be. So if you take it from an evolutionary biology perspective, when you're moving forward and you're doing things like going out to war or going out to hunt, if your fear system's on, you're not going out to hunt, you're not going out to fight, you're going the opposite direction. And so we've been endowed with this system in our brain that when we move forward, our dopamine goes way up, our brainwave frequencies change, and we feel empowered and capable of doing difficult things. Isn't that what we want for everybody? Right? Simple lateral eye movements. So instead of cut it out, stop doing that. You know that's bad for you. You know that makes people unhappy. You know what's going to happen to you when you do that. Just boom, 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 boom. Now let's have a talk. Right? Get your body, I always say, get your body ready to have a conversation. Right? If you think about that emotional alliance stuff, it's really about regulating both of us and then getting into higher order cognitive stuff, then doing critical thinking and problem solving and all of that. But, you know, for all these people who have difficulty, the problem's in their body, right? And it's not really, you know, I always say, don't believe everything you think, because people come in, they tell you, you know, I can't possibly live here anymore. It's terrible. They say, well, okay, I have to find you a new home. No, I'm not sure there's any truth in it at all. I know you feel uncomfortable in your body. Let's make you comfortable in your body. Then we can talk about anything, right? You become capable of critical thinking, you become capable of problem solving. But unless we do the necessary work right here, we never get there. And I think it's also important for us to call each other. When you step into the room and I see your body's wrong, I don't care if you're somebody gets services, somebody's in here for therapy, or another member of the team. I'm going to say to you, something's up, right? Let's do something about your body. I come in some days and say, look, I just read in from this, that, or the next thing. I need something for my body. Can we do something together? It's such a different orientation than, excuse me when I say this, you're fucked up and I'm smart, right?
Mhm.
That gets you nowhere, right? Because nobody wants to be fucked up,
Mhm.
right? And nobody misses the fact that they're doing things they shouldn't do and all of that stuff. I get this another Gregory Boyle line. He says, we don't raise the bar, we hold up the mirror, right? We raise the mirror and show you who you are and return you to yourself. That's it. That's what we're supposed to do, And anyway, I think that if you look across all of these things that we're doing, you find that talking to people about things is probably the least important thing we can do. Got nothing against it, but there are much more helpful, efficient, and effective ways to help people who are suffering. And especially when people behave in ways that challenge us, it's hard to remember it's all about their suffering. It's all about what's happened to them.
Al, I wanted to jump in for a second. Before the break, when you were talking and you were saying how a mind that's going in so many different directions it's hard for it to be happy or be focused and all of those different things. And it just reminded me of the characteristics that we see in a lot of individuals on the spectrum of the attention deficit and the short-term memory. And when you add those characteristics in with those statements that you were saying, it's like, oh, yeah. And then you look at like the eye movement or the sound, any of that, then really just kind of stops all of that outside noise and brings you focused right to the center.
Yeah.
And anyway, it just all lined up and clicked. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, darling. I have a little guy I've seen for years who's got autism, who's a really challenging guy. And when I first did the ocean meditation video, it's 11 minutes and change. I thought if I could get him to do it for a minute or two, because of his attention span, that would be a great place to start. The first day we did it, we did two of them. We did 22 minutes of the ocean meditation. And really, it's just watching the ocean. And I give you a little guidance, smell the air and listen to the water. And it changed our entire relationship because, he's kind of a jittery guy, right? And he comes into my office and I have an unusual office. It's a big room with a kitchen table. And I don't know if that's because I think that's where therapy should happen or because I'm Italian, one of those two things. And, we sit around the table and watch this video. And after a few times, I watch him come up the stairs with all this jittery energy. And then when he walks through the door, his body goes, oh. And he says, in the sweetest voice imaginable, he says, Al, can we do the ocean meditation video?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's where I want him. I want him in that state. I want that guy. That's who he is. That's what I mean when I say return him to himself. That's who he is. All of this stuff that's around us, all of these defenses we've built up, we want to just get rid of them, right? We take them away. And then you see the genuine person, and it's just, I don't know any quicker way to do it than to do these things we're talking about. And
Al, I don't know if you saw, but you had a heart pop up as a response to that on one of our participants here. And a lot of gentle smiles with that story just now.
this is so they before he came to the Francis Foundation, they had a behavioral super duper specialist of some, EDD, PhD, MD, whatever. And what he would do is he would grab people. Certain body types would attract him, and he would, in the community, run and grab him. It got him institutionalized, which made everything all the more worse, as you can imagine. And they had, who can dream this shit up? They had him walking around with his hands like this, like he was being crucified or something. They had him walking in the community like this. This is, come on, help his body settle so he doesn't need these things, and you will not meet a sweeter man than him. And he was quite instructive in terms of autism, because he responded to splashing, swimming sort of stuff, water. Oh my gosh, a little bit of splashing, and I'll tell you, well, I can tell you more about it, but anyway, you just fill your hands up with water, submerge your nose in the water, 5 or 6 seconds with your nose in, 5 or 6 times. Triggers the mammalian diving reflex. In the mammalian diving reflex, thank you, Jesus, or whoever gave it to us, Darwin. And he says, what happens is your body thinks you're going to drown, and it takes all the blood out of your large muscles, which you need for running and fighting, and it puts it in your lungs and brain. It says, if I'm underwater, I'm going to make you survive. It shuts down your cortisol. It lowers your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure, and it knocks down a hormone called vasopressin that is an potentially aggressive movement hormone. So all of this in 5 or 6 little dips of the nose. So he would go in and do the splashing. I call it splashing, but he would go in and we'd do that together. Then we'd dry off, and then he would float back into the room. And he could talk about all kinds of things he could never talk about. He had the sort of prototypical autistic presentation, fast speech, not really listening at all. And all of a sudden he could have a conversation. It returned him to himself. Take this away. All of this that he's had to build up over all these years. Right. So, any other thoughts, questions? Onward?
Yeah. You think?
Oh.
I don't know. I'm kind of, everybody's really quiet. Either they're really mellow, or it doesn't fit their paradigm, or they're really following you. I think it's, and I'm curious about those for whom this is new information, how it's feeling, and do you see how you can apply it and use it not just for yourself, but for your staff and for, for those of you that this is new information. I wonder if you have any ahas or thoughts about it.
It's not really new, but my client doesn't respond to water. He does not respond to the bell either.
Mm-hmm.
It actually does the opposite for him, only because he had a very traumatic event when he was placed in inpatient for a brief time, and they forced him to take a shower, and it was terrible. I mean, what they did to him. And so he doesn't respond to the water idea, and I've tried the bell with him too, but it gave him a freak out moment instead.
So I always expect, Paula, that and it's not always true, but I always expect this, that the first time you unveil a technique to somebody, they won't do it. So you just have to you have to do it yourself. So that's why womb breathing is so good.
Yeah, I'm hoping to gain more stuff, from my clients.
If you say to the person, you model what you want from them, right? And you say,
Mhm.
hey, listen, this is tough for me. I just had a real bad meeting with Katie, or, whatever. And I just need to breathe, I start every meeting that we have at Francis with one of these things. It takes 2 minutes. And I say, all right, everybody, let's get our bodies ready to have a conversation. And we do it. And now it's become part of our institution, right? Everybody does it all the time. There's a really beautiful study from Rwanda. And it's tragic, what these kids went through in Rwanda with all the genocide, and, kids watch their parents get hacked up and killed in front of them, and all of these horrific things. And so they send a tapping group in there to do some research, and they go in and they get a couple sessions with the kids, and then something goes wrong. The mercenaries come back or something like that. And it's a school for kids with PTSD. And 100% of the kids have very dramatic PTSD from all of the terrible experiences. And so they do a couple rounds of tapping, they do some tests, and 92% of the kids, or 96% of the kids, no longer meet the criteria for PTSD after 2 sessions. You got anything? You got another trick that does that? I don't.
No.
I don't. And we're not talking about, a couple things went wrong here. We're talking about tragic circumstances.
Yeah.
So the researchers leave and they come back in a year. And at the end of the year, they expect none of this is going to hold, right? It holds almost as well as I think it was 96% after the initial treatment. At the end of the year, it's 94% or something. It's held up for a year. And of course, the researchers say that's not possible. That's not possible that 2 tapping treatments a year ago, you still don't have PTSD. And it turns out that the principal, or the main guy at the schoolmaster, he saw this and he saw the impact on the kids, and he institutionalized it.
He kept doing, yeah.
He said, anybody's got a problem, we're all tapping on each other and tapping on kids. And that's what did it. And when I read that study, I said, yep, that's it. Every meeting, we start with something. You're demonstrating to other people, you're living it. You're living it. You're not just talking about it. It's not like you're fucked up. Come on in, let's breathe. It's like, hey, the messenger is the message. I got to breathe. I got to tap. I got to do these things so I can just be. Again, the world is full of suffering and discomfort. And if I allow my brain to be taken over by the suffering and discomfort, and I am a privileged son of a bitch, I'll tell you. I didn't have a bad childhood. I'm married to the same woman for almost 50 years. I live in a beautiful place in the country. My kids and my grandkids live right here with me, around us. I mean, you couldn't make this up,
Sure.
But boy, oh boy, when I used to come home from work, when I was at work all day and came home, first 5 minutes I get home in the driveway, I'm breathing, because I got to make that transition from business, work, whatever, to be able to sit with my wife and say, how was your day? Right? You got to do that. But if you're in the wrong state, you can't, right?
Right.
So I come in the house and I say, okay, what's for dinner? What's the dog? Did you walk the dog? I'll walk the dog. What do you want to have for dinner? You do that stuff. That's not good for relationships, right?
Agreed.
Take the 5 minutes to breathe, and then go in and you say, how was your day? And you actually mean it. And you actually sit still and listen, right? Because your body's in the right place. So, and in answer to your other questions, there's a bunch of techniques. everybody doesn't like all of them.
Sure.
They're all great, but everybody doesn't like all of them. Acupuncture, I'm sure you have community acupuncture out there. Community acupuncture is one of the most powerful things I've ever seen, right? And the reason I say community acupuncture, because we've westernized acupuncture, right? So you have to call somebody and they set you up an appointment for next week at 10 o'clock and you have your appointment. Community acupuncture is designed to be a walk-in clinic. And it's on a sliding scale and multiple people get treated at the same time. And so you can just walk in. So I have a staff person who comes in and he's completely out of his mind. And he's all upset about a bunch of things and he's kooky to begin with, and he's trying to talk to me and I'm trying to talk to him. And I said, and he's also a vet, right? So he says, this guy said that. And then I said it to him. What do you think about that? And I said, well, hold on a minute. I called Travis, who runs the acupuncture clinic. I said, Travis, can you fit the two of us in? We went over for an acupuncture treatment. And when we walked out of the office after our treatment, I said, how do you feel? He said, I haven't felt like this since I was a little boy. It's pretty good. Pretty good. One treatment. And the treatment is on a sliding scale. So it was 15 or 20 bucks, not 150. Right. So you imagine you have some kid who's struggling and you say, hop in the car, honey, I'll take you over we'll get a treatment. And you get a treatment with him and her, right? I wouldn't miss it. I usually got a good relationship with the acupuncture guy. And we bring him to a team meeting and everybody in the team gets needled, right? So you're saying to the kid, hey, this is for all of us. This is not about you being fucked up. This is what we all need to be okay.
But do you have anything that works with either adults or children that are very sensory, hypersensitive to sensory, and they do not want anybody to touch them?
Sure.
Not even their parents.
Well, because what is that? That's that shield.
Yeah.
So we got to take the shield down, and the shield doesn't come down if you touch him because that's part of the shield, right?
Right.
So, there is probably nothing more powerful than breathing.
Yeah. That's
right. And the mirror neuron stuff is if I tap on me, you should get the benefit. But breathing, let's go into breathing a little bit. And I want to talk about rescue breathing as well. But boy, the research on breathing and the effect of breathing. So, all right, let me see if I can go back to share screen without losing all your beautiful faces.
Thank you, Al.
Share screen. Yeah. Okey doke. That should do it. There we go. So I'm going to go big screen somehow, right? Slideshow. From current slide. Look at that. I figured it out by myself.
The guy,
Yay.
the guy.
But now I lost you guys again.
Yep.
All right. So let me talk a little bit about some of the techniques. And then depending upon time, we'll jump into, we got a little bit of time here. So here's the 10 techniques, and there's really 9 pictures, but there's 2 different types of meditation. I use a guided meditation and also walking meditation. But let me just go through a few of them real quick. Do you guys have people who cut themselves?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a study out of Canada on inpatient kids who are inpatient who are cutting themselves on an average of 3 times per week. They get 3 sessions of acupuncture, and the cutting drops by 87% in 1 week, 3 sessions. Got anything that works that good? You know, I was in acupuncture with so at the Francis Foundation, we only take one person in at a time, and we only choose the most difficult people we can find. So you have to fail a lot to get to us. And I was in acupuncture with 7 people who get services at Francis, like $1.5 million worth of services. And we all get needled, and all 7 of them are sound asleep. Can't get calmer than that. You know, it gives you this opportunity to find this safe place that literally doesn't exist in most of their worlds. So swimming, splashing, again, I told you about this. You can trigger the mammalian diving reflex even with just dipping your nose in water a few times. And I do it 5 or 6 seconds, 5 or 6 times. You get a decrease in heart rate, blood pressure, cortisol, which is the fuel hormone for stress, and a drop in vasopressin. How about hand holding? And again, I don't recommend you go lollygagging through the mall holding hands, but James Cohn, who's done a lot of the research on hand holding, and he puts people in an fMRI, and then he threatens them with a shock and a bell kind of craziness. And if you're holding a person's hand, and particularly if they're your significant other, and if you get along well, your fear response, your amygdala does not turn on, right? Dancing and singing, it does a number of things. And if you think of this again from evolutionary perspective, it makes sense. What did people do before they went hunting and before so you go hunting, and the tribes are, you know, between 100 and 150 people or so, which means you have some close relationships and some relationships that are not so close and some relationships that are probably bad. And yet you go hunt and bring the food back and share it with all the people in your tribe. And the same with fighting, right? So you have to go out and you don't fight for yourself, you fight for the whole team, for the whole tribe. And prior to doing that is always this routine of dancing and singing, because it is the quickest way to solidify social relationships. So singing together, I have a number of people who are music people, and they like to listen to music, but singing together is a whole different thing. And there's a whole lot of science behind that. Meditation, I said we do both the walking meditation and the guided meditation. You know, meditation's kind of got a bad name because I think sitting and contemplating is not easy for anybody to do. And even if you talk to John Kabat-Zinn or any of the meditators, they say, you know, my mind is constantly wandering, and I'm trying to bring it back. So guided meditation, you are not controlling your mind. You're focusing your attention on something, which could be anything like the bell or whatever. In the ocean meditation, it's a combination of vision and sound, but again, shows your body right out. Breathing, we're going to talk about in a few minutes, so I won't say much about it, but there's a great deal of science behind it, and it turns on your vagal brake. So it goes directly to your autonomic nervous system and controls the nerve that slows your heart down. And your heart then sends a signal when your heart is slow to your brain that everything's okay, that you're safe, or your heart wouldn't be beating slow. Power posing, it's a little controversial and everybody doesn't like it, but I found it quite useful for a lot of groups. And there are some people who just love it. We just took a fellow from another state out of prison where he's been locked up for a couple of years for various things. And he's a really big dude, and he loves power posing. And you know, he's big, he's 6'5" or 6", and he spreads his arms like wings, and he can't wait to do the power posing. And it, you know, in the research, it lowers your cortisol, which is stress hormone, but it also increases your testosterone, and it increases your confidence and diminishes your fear. So, and then there's tapping, which is, well, I mean, it doesn't, tapping is just a remarkable thing. And you're tapping on meridian points, the same points you use in acupuncture or acupressure. We also do a bunch of acupressure with some people. So anyway, there's all the basics techniques. Let's go on. So here's the things that we typically do, and I'm sure all of you have done this, and I certainly have done all of these things. So when somebody comes in and they're upset, you tell them to calm down, which since the language center isn't working, if they're upset enough, that'll be cause enough to get them to smack you. Take a walk, and I don't know, can you guys see me?
Yes.
So this is my description. When you're mad and you go take a walk, here's my description of what it looks like. I'm arguing with you and I'm saying, you know, Katie, Jesus, Katie, you were supposed to send me that email. You never sent me the goddamn email. And then I go for a walk. And what do I do when I go for a walk? I say, goddamn Katie, she never sent me that email. And you know, the loop continues. Now, if you walk long enough, you can walk yourself out of that loop. But telling somebody just go take a walk doesn't work. Take a deep breath. That's the worst advice you can give anybody because it actually turns on your sympathetic system. And so it's not helpful at all. All right, but no confessions necessary. I've done all of these things. I'm sure many of you have done them as well. All right, let's go into womb breathing. And Paula, this is probably a reasonably good technique. I'll talk about two kinds of breathing, womb breathing and also rescue breathing. So how
I
does
have a quick question before you move on. I had my hand raised, but I wanted to ask, and I guess I could Google it, but the acupuncture you suggested for cutting, I know little to nothing about acupuncture. Do you go in with a specific, hello, I would like acupuncture for cutting, or is it just, I mean, are you that specific, or do you, is it just overall stress relief that is helpful? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, I can't see anybody raising their
Yeah.
hand, so just shout out if you. Well, it raises a really interesting point because what I do is if I can't find it in research, I certainly trust our acupuncturist. He knows a whole lot more about acupuncture than I ever will. However, I do often request specific treatments. And there's a really interesting one that's based on 5 studies. And, you know, I have a good relationship with this guy. So I send him these 5 studies and a summary of information around them and what I thought the treatment protocol should be. It's his call to do what he thinks is best. But I don't know how deeply. See, here comes the rabbit hole. About to jump in. So if you're born to a depressed mother, one of the things that research says is you'll have less activity on your left side of your brain and more activity on the right side of your brain. And so right hemisphere in the front, high activity, left hemisphere in the front, low activity. And that's important because your left is your approach system and your right is your avoidance system. So these people are born avoidant, not intentionally. I have no criticism of the mothers. They didn't ask to be depressed. There's a specific treatment for that. Now, that does not change over time if you get therapy or if you get medication. However, there are a number of things, including acupuncture, that will change that. So I sent him a number of studies, including some PTSD studies, and we developed a specific protocol for that treatment. Typically, we do auricular acupuncture with your ears, and it's very common because there's parasympathetic and sympathetic points in your ears. And then he does a number of other points. So I think you have to have a conversation with the person. If you bring them that study on cutting and show it to them, and they say, well, that's ridiculous, or I don't do this, find another acupuncturist. They should be willing to have a conversation with you about how the treatment goes. Most of the people that I bring in I don't have any recommendations for their treatment. That's really up to him, and he's just been fabulous. So, but I do sometimes have specific recommendations and feel the need to look at the science behind it and not just accept it. So he is really excited about this protocol we developed, and we're looking for patients to come in and get the treatment. But in the cutting study, they got 3 treatments for a week, and it dropped 87%. By a month out, the incidence had gone back up, which to me means you need more treatments, right? It's not that it doesn't work, is that you just need ongoing treatment. There are plenty of medications you take every day. I'm not suggesting you need to take acupuncture every day, but for some people, more regular acupuncture is really important. So, did that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Big fan. I'm a big fan. My grandson, my oldest grandson, got COVID, but then he got some long-term COVID symptoms, including GI stuff. And if you talk to the medical people, they say, you treat it like he's got a stomach ache, like he's got acid reflux. There's no other treatments for it. But your sympathetic system, when that gets jacked up, it shuts off your parasympathetic system. And your parasympathetic system is the part that manages your body. So anyway, long story short, I thought if we could power up his parasympathetic system and dampen down his sympathetic system, that we could get his body to work better. And so we went, he's going weekly for treatments, and we went a couple times together, and, he absolutely felt much better after. And, he would have continued to improve, I imagine, anyway, but I think this absolutely speeded up his recovery. All right. Shall we boom? Do I
Yes,
have you on?
please. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's room.
Okay. So here's a Japanese study, which I think is really enlightening. How does deep breathing affect office blood pressure and pulse rate? So this is a high blood pressure clinic, and they ask people to take 6 breaths before they go in and have their blood pressure taken. And for the untreated people with high blood pressure, which in effect is people who are upset, right? In this study, it's people who have high blood pressure, but high blood pressure is related to being upset. It drops 10 points, 6 breaths. So you're talking about probably a minute of breathing, and you can bring your blood pressure down dramatically and quickly. Again, 1 minute. I don't know what other treatment works in 1 minute. Let me go over the. Turns out I've been inhaling when I should be exhaling, exhaling when I should be inhaling. Some of the breathing techniques are simple, but there are some basic stuff here. And if you want to help people to breathe therapeutically, and the reason I have Matthew Ricard there is because they found a lot of this information from studying yogis and Buddhist monks who came here to be examined by Western medicine. And when they did, they told the people to go into a calm state, and this is what they did. They would slow their breathing down substantially, so about 6 breaths per minute. They would have a longer exhale than inhale. So when you inhale, your heart races, and when you exhale, your heart slows down. Inhale is sympathetic, exhale is parasympathetic. So we want to power up the parasympathetic system, and so it's a long exhale. Breathe in the nose and out the mouth. That has lots of benefits for multiple reasons. You breathe deeply, but not long. So it isn't a big, deep inhale. It's a deep inhale, but then a long exhale. And then again, probably develop a practice. I mentioned Dr. Levine, Peter Levine. He discovered VU breathing way back in the 60s, and it was quite effective. He was dealing with Vietnam vets. And there's lots of good studies on veterans and breathing. We added the hum, because the hum increases your nitrous oxide and nitric oxide. And one of the things that does is it increases your circulation and decreases your carbon dioxide. So it's a vasodilator and a bronchodilator. It opens your veins and it opens your blood vessels, and it opens your air sacs in your chest, and it has a positive effect on neurotransmitters. So if you look at breathing as a treatment for mental health disorders, particularly PTSD, veterans are notorious for not completing treatment. And this is a group of PTSD veterans who went through the treatment, I believe it was 8 weeks, and very significant drops between time 1 and time 2. So pre-test, post-test, very significant drops in PTSD symptoms, hyperarousal, and that's what we're talking about, this body getting really jacked up and re-experiencing things that have happened. At the end of the year, look how strong those results are. And even in the re-experiencing, they got much better. So this is an easy thing. It doesn't require, you don't need a therapist to do this. You just need to learn how to do it, and you can do it. And the other thing about this study, again, the vets are notorious for dropping out of these things. 90% completion rate. That's pretty fabulous. So let's do some Voom breathing, okay? And I typically do 30 breaths. And 30 breaths is about 5 minutes. So I will ask you to do those with me. What I'll do is I'll say breathe in, and then I'll Voom out. And if we could all do that together 30 times, that would be great. Before we do it, I typically do a SUD score, so subjective units of distress. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel right now? You could think of something that's bothering you a little bit and just focus on that for a second. Then we'll go into the breathing. And then when we're done, we'll go through those scores again. Okay, so just follow me. Breathe in. Voom. And 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 breathe in. Voom. breathe in. And 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 breathe in. Now keep your eyes closed for just a minute and appreciate what that did for your body. Now open your eyes and come back to the room. And let's go back to whatever little thing that was bothering you and see if your score has dropped at all. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very upset, 1 being really calm, how do you feel about that problem? So there's a lot of information there, but you really don't have to remember any of it. It's just doing that process. So anybody want to comment on how they feel? Well, somebody going to say something?
I'll say something, always. I'm much, much calmer, much,
Yeah.
much calmer, and much less, the thing that was bothering me is now in my head, not in my body.
Right. Right. And you can only get upset in your body. You can't get upset in your head. That's great. That's great. I dare any of you to misbehave now. You just can't. You just can't. And so that's a 5-minute investment. It works as good as talk therapy for many things. You know, can you make 5 minutes twice a day? Or 5 minutes 3 times a day? Can you remember before you're going into something difficult to do it? Can you stop yourself in the middle of something that's challenging and do it? Can you do it to recover after something's bothered you? And the answer to all three of those questions is yes. You know, I have been doing this thing, which I find incredibly useful. So do you ever get frustrated because the line isn't moving fast enough at the supermarket, or the traffic's not moving, or your husband and wife is too long in the pharmacy or the grocery store, and you're sitting there in the car waiting? How about if you were to transform those moments into practice times, right? And you find throughout your day, there are a lot of times when you're just waiting for somebody else to do something before you can move on. Somebody's 5 minutes late for the meeting, whatever it is. Imagine that you could use those times as something really positive for yourself. You even begin to look forward to them because you get to do your practice and you get to feel so much better. Kind of interesting, isn't it? All right. We're going to go to rescue breathing. Now, rescue breathing, remember the Japanese study, it's about 6 breaths to have a significant impact on blood pressure. Rescue breathing is a little different because it includes the physiological sigh. And sighing is something, believe it or not, we do as adults, about every 5 minutes. And this will make a whole lot more sense to you if you think of a kid who's crying and trying to recover, and the way they take these like double in breaths, they go, all right? You've all seen it and done it. But the physiological sigh does a bunch of stuff, including reestablishing your heart rate variability, which is really a measure of that vagal brake or parasympathetic tone. And in addition to that, you have these things in your lungs called alveoli. They're those tiny little sacs that catch air, and they deflate over time, and which is why the physiological sigh is necessary to reinflate your lungs. So what it does is get more oxygen to your lungs, but it also offloads more carbon dioxide. So, and it's pretty simple. It's just this. And again, I've lost you guys, but I hope you can see me. So it's the Voom breathing with a double in breath. And so we'll do 6 of those. And it's not a big double in breath. It's be gentle on your body. So it's a Voom. And one of the reasons I ask you to close your eyes for these exercises is that when you do that, it doubles the amount of alpha in your brain. So that medium frequency that's really calming goes up as much as 50% when you close your eyes. So you're kind of giving yourself the double whammy. So, all right, let's do 6 of those together. Voom. 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 And let's just keep our eyes closed for a moment and appreciate what that did for our bodies. Voom. Voom. And then open your eyes and come back to the room. Feel any difference between that and the regular womb breathing?
I felt my back, shoulders relax.
Mhm,
I was more aware of the relaxation in my shoulder.
mhm.
Yeah.
6 breaths and you're good to go. So that's, your kid just says to you, you're a bad parent, or your husband says it's a lousy dinner, or I don't know, whatever. And 6 of those will put you back together. So really, really powerful. I've done 30 and I don't know how I stayed awake, but I was so relaxed. I just wanted to pass out. And I also find I have trouble stopping, even though I say, let's do 6, I really want to just keep going. So I don't know if any of you experienced that as well, but all right, let's jump into tapping. So there's a bunch of spots on your head. You start at what they call a karate chop right here. And then between these 2 fingers, then top of the head, hairline, between the eyes, side of the eyes, under the eyes, mustache, chin, and collarbone. And if you look up EFT, emotional freedom technique, they have just tons and tons of information about tapping. I don't think, although I've been trained in EFT, I don't think we're really doing EFT. I think most of these things we're just using for grounding. So if you're using lateral eye movements, don't pretend you're doing EMDR, because you're not, but you are gaining some of the advantages of lateral eye movements to your body, just as a grounding technique. So in a meta-analysis, believe it or not, tapping, get ready for this, equal effect size to EMDR and CBT. Right, so talk therapy and EMDR, tapping performed as well. And I've been studying tapping for a long time. And I just find it to be one of the just most powerful things you can do. And again, you don't need to wait till you can see your psychologist next Tuesday at 3:00. If you're upset right now, we train the parents, we train the caregivers, we train the people themselves. My experience with tapping is that most people, and this is personal experience, there's no research on this, mostly people benefit from me tapping on them. And I'm not sure why that is, because people who really understand it seem to believe that it's as powerful if you tap on yourself, but that hasn't been my experience. So I do teach people to tap on themselves, but I always ask if you'd like me to tap on you, or if you'd rather tap on yourself. And almost never do people say, I'd rather tap on myself. I think it's an interpersonal achievement, really, to be able to do this with people. I had a very traumatized kid who just took to tapping like crazy. And, she'd come find me when she was feeling out of whack. And we put her in, I forget what it's called, Peter Levine's treatment with a friend of mine. She really needed something else outside of what we were doing. And so when she went to get her treatment, she asked me to tap on her in our first session together. And the woman couldn't believe that somebody that traumatized would actually let me touch them. So, and I always ask first, and I never jump into it, but, particularly the collarbone. So when I get down to here, the face and the hands, I'm pretty good with. I always ask first, but when I get to the collarbone, then we get close to other stuff that we don't want them to feel invaded. So, effect on depression, anxiety, severity of both, and cortisol. Again, when you get these very objective physiological measures, like your cortisol drops 50%, I don't know anything that does any of that. So let me watch. So if you, so can you guys see this?
Yes.
All right. So let me tell you, oh, you're back. Hi. Uh, This is a kid who came to me, oh, my God, I don't know how long ago this is, quite a while. And again, very traumatized. She's in a wheelchair. And when she was little, uh, people did very bad things to her, including putting her in very hot water and burning her and doing things like that. So when she comes to therapy, what is she thinking? I got to tell this guy everything terrible that's ever happened to me. And I try to convince her that's really not the purpose of this, to bring up all these things. It's okay to talk about it, but at least we have to get our bodies ready if we're going to have those discussions. And therapy is not about reporting all the worst experiences of your life. It's about removing all of this stuff that's happened because of all these experiences. You know, that's one of the things I think I really like about Bruce Perry is it's not what happened, it's how what happened affected you, right? And so we're talking about the effects being captured in the body once again. So that's where the work is. You can go back to that, but I don't often do that. I do if people want, but really I'm about here, about that experience changed your body in this way. It made you react to these things in this way. And so how can we do the work right here to get that to settle down? So anyway, this is the second session with this kid, and she's got it after the first one. So let me play a little bit of this for you. So we all said it together. Remember what we said?
Doing the best I can and everything.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, let's get started. We're gonna start with this hand, okay? And I'm gonna start right here on your karate chop. And we're all gonna say together.
I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can. Everybody knows it.
So let's just enjoy the place we're at right now. I'm going to just talk over this for a minute. You see, you know, this kid does not have a safe place in the world. But she's in it right now. You know, and I don't know how long she's going to be in this, but I certainly am not taking her out of it. Right? I just leave her there and just wait. And I think it goes on for 5 or 6 minutes. I can't talk her into that state. Right? I can't say, you know, you're safe, just relax. One of the things I always do is I hold a hand, and when I tap on the karate chop and the back of the hand, I hold the hand for that. But again, double bang for my buck. I hold on to the hand unless they withdraw it. If they take their hand away, fine. But I figure I'm doing two things at the same time. And, you know, this is all about us, right? So when this kid needs a safe place in the world, she's going to know where to come, right? When she wants to turn all of that off.
You probably can't see the chat, but this is so beautiful to watch. Thank you for sharing this video. Very touching and powerful. That was 2 different comments.
Thank you. You know, I don't know how you could watch this and not want to go tap on everybody in pain. So, always wants to make me cry. One of the things that you know, I talked about this a little bit before, but when you think about your right hemisphere and your left hemisphere, I don't know if you know the work of Ian McGilchrist, the master and his emissary. There was a lot of left brain, right brain stuff done in the 70s by a guy named Gazzaniga and other people, and it turned out a lot of it didn't hold. And Ian McGilchrist came along and said, well, you know, your brain all works together to accomplish these things, but it specializes not in, so one side is in attention, the other side has no ability to attend. It's kind of like what it attends to, right? So your left brain is about approach, more likely to contain positive feelings. Your right brain is more likely to contain negative feelings, but is all about withdrawal. And so people like her, they have lots of activity in their right brain. And this is research-based. This is not me projecting. And very little activity on the left side. And in fact, this is the brain waves, the brain signature for depression is low activity here and high activity here. The brain signature for anxiety is high activity here, low activity here. It's exactly the same thing, right? And so it's this asymmetry in the brain that's got me really, really interested and excited about how to provide treatment. So I've been looking at different ways to do it. And in fact, here's a study. This is not a new study. This guy, Paul Swingle, he's from just north of you guys. He did tapping, 2 sessions of tapping after an auto accident. And again, you know, if you could do EMDR, it's not going to be 2 sessions. It's going to be a heck of a lot more than that. And here's what he found: reduced brainwave frequencies. So beta, I don't know how much you know about brainwave frequencies, but it's delta is asleep, theta is sort of in that transition state, alpha is calm, low beta is thoughtful, high beta is anxious. And so what you find with people with anxiety is their beta waves they got lots of beta. So in this study, Swingle did 2 sessions. He found he lowered brainwave frequency and he decreased arousal on the right side. All right. So again, this is fear, this is withdrawal, this is the people who run away. If you stop them from running away, they hit you. They got too much activity on the right side. A 27% increase in motor cortex activity. So effects across the brain, and a SUD score, subjective units of distress, drops from 8.3 to 2.5. So that's that 1 to 10 scale, being 10 is really upset, 1 is really calm. So this is, and there's so much stuff here. Again, here is the, this is the acupuncture study, and you see also after acupuncture, the asymmetry in the brain is reversed, and you're getting more activity. Oh my gosh, more activity on the right side than the left side, which is what you want. More activity on the left side than the right side. It's dampening down this activity and increasing this activity. This is an old study by a lady at Harvard, and she found a decrease in the fear center in your brain post tapping. All right, so let's do a little tapping. How are we doing for time? Oh, we got time. Okay. So can you all see me?
Yes.
You know, I really like that I'm doing the best I can and everybody knows it. That's just my mantra. But I think you're doing two things when you do that mantra. One is you're telling the person you got it. You know, I know it's tough for you and you're doing the best you can. The other thing is you're telling everybody else who's around, that kid is doing the best they can. Right? I don't care what the behavior looks like. They're doing the very best they can. Right? So we'll do the mantra on each point 3 times. So we'll start on the karate chop. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. In between the last 2 fingers, I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. Top of the head, that little point up there, I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. Doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. Hairline, doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. Between the eyes, I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. Sides of the eye, doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. Under the eye, I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. Mustache, I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. Chin, I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. Collarbone, doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can, and everybody knows it. Now just close your eyes and appreciate what that did for your body. very gently open your eyes and come back to the room. Nap time for anybody yet?
Yes, please.
You know, I, I think it was out your way. I did a workshop for some therapy group out there, and they invited some other people in. And one of the ladies who came in, when she got home that night, her young kid was concerned, crying about COVID or upset, couldn't get to sleep. She went in and tapped on her. She said, "What the hell, right? I have 2 minutes." She tapped on her and she put her right to sleep. So, I've seen it be really super effective, especially around just calming the body so you can get to sleep. Really good.
Oh,
Yeah,
hi, it's Janet. Does it matter if you're tapping on the left hand or the right hand?
doesn't matter at all. You can tap.
Okay,
which side,
there's
you
no
can- No.
voodoo about.
No, tap, the points are important, but you can tap bilaterally on one side.
Okay.
You can switch sides as you go down. Doesn't seem to matter.
Oh,
Somebody else say something?
I'd like to add that I used to take yoga years ago. And that was one of the things we did once a week was tapping.
Oh, really?
And it was one of the best experiences. Every week we did tapping. You just leave like a marshmallow. I mean, everything just was so good.
Yeah, and there's been a number of guys, including Dawson Church, who have just put their whole careers into tapping. And the research is remarkable.
Yeah.
It really is remarkable. So quite good. I'll tell you this real quick. You probably will find this if you use it regularly. You'll find people who are they've already discovered some of the tapping points. So I had this young lady I went to Canada. Of course, it was an Italian version of consultation. I brought my son, my grandson, and a bunch of people, and we went and we met this gal. And they were literally calling the crisis service on her every night. And anyway, we were in a group and we did the tapping and we videoed the tapping. And the next day we sat down with 15 members of the crisis team who had been responding to her. And we put the video on. And as soon as the video, and she's got like sort of a ADHD kind of presentation. She talks a lot. She can't focus her attention. She's kind of all over the map. And as soon as the video went on, she went,
Yeah.
and just stilled her whole body. So again, this is a grounding technique that you should probably do on a regular basis with people, so that when I was just telling somebody on the phone this morning, this kid who just blew out of his home, they're talking to him instead of helping him with these things. And I said, you got to develop a practice where you use it on a regular basis. Don't wait to try to do it when somebody's upset, right? You will already have told their body that this works.
Mhm.
And, I've had people come to me. I had this gal who had autism, and she was a rocker and a roller, and she would go and really go. And which was the only way she knew how to calm herself. And she would come in the room with her home provider and staff and stuff. And as soon as she sat down in front of me, she'd just go, so it was, again, in our relationship. So let me finish up with rescue tapping. So just much like rescue breathing, there's going to be times when you just got to have it, and I got to have it quick. And I'll tell you a little bit about it. This is your trigeminal nerve that sits right here, like from your ear out to here. You see it right across here. It connects to all of the nerves in your face and connects back to your 10th cranial nerve or your vagus. And so it's directly connected back to the body, to your heart, and to all of your organs. There's a number of studies on it. Trigeminal nerve stimulation for PTSD, depressive disorder, and even ADHD. And there's a study on an EEG analysis, and this is the same thing I was talking about before. You see all of this activity on the right and low activity on the left. And what they found was from bilateral tapping on the trigeminal nerve, you get this huge increase in the power of delta. And it evaporates you get 3,500% increase in delta waves, which evaporate fear memories. So, okay, I'm here worried about whatever I'm worried about. And simple bilateral tapping, right? So boom, 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 boom. So let's close our eyes. Think of something mildly disturbing. And I do mean mildly. And let's do it for a minute or so. And then close your eyes and appreciate what that did for your body. When you're ready, gently open your eyes and come back to the room. So I do realize everybody's going to sleep well tonight. We only got about 2 minutes left. I wanted to just show you this, and we'll end with this. This is a kid with autism who came in at 316 pounds and 6'5".
Wow.
He was wreaking havoc in a home he was in. He had 3 on 1 staff, and he's also doesn't speak, so that made it a little tougher to talk at him. But people are we went to visit him in the home, and they would say, "No, cut it out, stop, no." So we started with acupressure. Let us do some of that. So here on the neck, we had multiple points we were using for him, and we look at his behavior when he's hitting people and stuff as straight dysregulation. And so calming his body down was the whole approach. And it was a little difficult to teach all these guys that the primary response, he's distressed. When he's distressed, he hits. The primary response is to go to his body and settle that down. And now, well, let me show you the video and then it's short.
He loves those facial points.
So anyway, the long story short, what he would do, what he does now is when he gets upset, he just goes and lays on the couch. And then the guys go over to him and tap on him. So that didn't happen overnight. That took a long time, but we've only had him for probably a year and a half, and the aggression is virtually gone, and it was constant. And no, for him to just go lay himself down and say, you didn't say it, but lay himself down and open himself to treatment has really been extraordinary for people to watch. It's quite moving. So, all right, so probably got we don't even have a minute, but I'll stay if anybody wants to ask any questions or make any comments. I don't want to hold you. I know you probably have a million things to do.
Appreciate it, Al, a lot. I have supervision in about a minute, so I have to go, but I appreciate it.
You're
I
more
learned
than
a few
welcome.
things. And
Thank you.
all that.
Great.
So Al, can I talk you into stop screenings or sharing so we can see people's faces?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
Stop share.
Stop sharing.
Oh, hey, everybody.
We're back.
Oh, hey, most of you. All
So
right.
I don't know if you can see in the chat box, but so many people are saying, thank you. This was so helpful. Thank you for this.
Great.
Thank you so much. This is a beautiful presentation. On and on and on and on and on. So many people being with their gratitude for you.
Gratitude for the truth, that's all. But I'm very happy to do it. Spread the word. Yeah.
Yeah.
It occurs to me we really need to teach our parents this. Right.
Oh,
I mean, there's that hidden group of parents that are being dealing with really aggressive children and being attacked on a regular basis, that are even fearful to talk to anybody, and this is what they need.
And they have their relationship built in already.
yeah. You know, there's a guy, he's in Virginia, I think. I don't know how to say his Nirbhay Singh, S-I-N-G-H. And he's done a lot of research in developmental disabilities on teaching parents mindfulness skills.
Mhm.
And he's got, you know, he must be old school because he's got all these great graphs with aggressive behavior and compliance and all these things. And you watch, you train the parents and aggression goes to zero.
Yeah.
And compliance goes way up. And there's a whole bunch of studies on it. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. You train caregivers, you train parents, you train all of them. And like you said, schools, you know, my grandson is in a local school here, great school, people are terrific, I love them. You know, they still got they don't call it timeout, but what they call it something, you know.
Resolution. Call them
Yeah.
resolutions. Yeah.
I hate that.
Yeah.
You know, call it timeout if it's timeout. Don't call it, you know, the king's chair, or I don't know, whatever thing they come up with, you know, something crazy. But yeah, I saw a kid in the airport. I was coming home from Florida yesterday, and there's two little boys and they're with their grandparents. And the little boy that was like maybe 4, he punches the 6-year-old in the ear. Now he didn't hurt him, but you know, he did punch him. And the grandfather gets enraged and goes like he's gonna slap the kid. And I thought, who's teaching who what here, right? And then the mother, the grandmother, she puts her finger right in the kid's face and she starts yelling at him saying, and when you get home, you're going to time out, mister, and you're not getting this and you're not getting that. And I thought, boy, you missed a beautiful opportunity to teach this kid something, you know, but anyway. So keep in touch with me. Let me know if you need more information or whatever. Thank you.
Absolutely. It was wonderful, Al. Thank you so much.
Great. All right. Take care.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Hey, Darla, would you hang on for a second?
Yes.
Hi, Linda Lou. I got a joke for you guys. I wanted to share it, but I didn't want to ruin the air. This is about mindfulness. This is I heard this from a guy who lives in a monastery in West Australia. So this guy is so chill, so relaxed, right? On the monastery, everybody has a job. So they assign this guy the job of taking care of the giant turtles. Okay, that was his job. The people noticed that the turtles were gone. They got out. They said to this guy, "What happened?" And he said, "I don't know. I went to open the gate to feed them and they went whoosh." Isn't that cute? Isn't that
Right.
cute? Yeah. So